Welcome, brothers, sisters, fellow travelers. My name is Joel and this is Good Crazy. Being a Christian is supposed to be easy. Life itself can be really hard, but being a Christian is not supposed to be the hard part. How do I know that? Because that's what Jesus himself said. If you recall, when Jesus invited people to become his followers, he said, "Come to me, all you weary and overburdened, and I will give you rest." What he was talking about was the way the people of that time were struggling under a religious system that was very oppressive. He said the religious leaders liked to bind up heavy loads to put on the shoulders of people. And what he meant were the traditions and human rules that they added to what God actually wants from us. But he was offering something completely different. He said it would give us rest. And in some translations, it says that he would refresh us. So when we think about that, something restful or refreshing, it's hardly work. It's something that's actually enjoyable. If you've ever gone from carrying like a really heavy load to something much lighter, it's almost like you've been given a break. You're technically carrying something, but it's light. And that's what he said it would be like for his disciples. He said his yoke, still using that metaphor of having to use a yoke, but he said his yoke was kindly. The word is more like fitting in Greek, that is to say, something specific to you, comfortable for you, and that the load itself was light. So that's what we're supposed to expect from Christianity: something restful, something refreshing, something light, something kindly. So we have to ask ourselves, right? Thinking about our own Christianity, is it something easy? Because it's supposed to be. And if it's not, what's the problem? Why isn't it easy? I feel like there's lots of people, and I include myself in that, that grew up in a type of Christianity that we might have told ourselves was easy, but looking back, there were so many rules that we had to follow. And so today, as well as in the past, the problem is the same: that people come along and add human rules to Christianity, traditions to Christianity that aren't even necessary. And they just add to our burdens in this world. And it's hard enough as it is. For instance, growing up as a Christian, I always believed that you had to go to church on Sunday. I mean, that's just part of being a Christian. It seems to be understood. And if I didn't go or didn't want to go, I felt bad. I felt like I was disappointing God because that's what God needed of me. But what's interesting is when you look at what Jesus actually asked of us versus what the churches try to impose upon us, many times they're completely different things. For instance, Jesus himself never built a church, never gave instructions on how to build churches, never had his disciples build churches. So, where did that come from? He also never said anything about Sunday being a special day of worship. In fact, when the Samaritan woman asked him about where the appropriate place to worship God was, he said that God was a spirit and wanted to be worshiped in spirit and truth, and that the location was not what mattered. Doesn't that make sense? We're talking about the creator of the universe. We can be Christians no matter where we are geographically, no matter what time of day it is, no matter what day of the week it is, because being a Christian means to behave the way Christ behaved. And so, where did that rule come from? If it didn't come from Jesus, then it must have come from other humans who added that rule. And it might seem like a good rule, and it's not to say that people going to church is a bad thing. But when you feel that it's an extra thing you have to do and it wears on you, then is it really that helpful? And it's not just whether or not we go to church. If we go to church, often they're passing a collection plate or they want donations of some sort. Why? Because they have to maintain a building that now exists, and they have to pay for a preacher, a pastor to take care of the congregation. There's so many other expenses that come in place because now we have to have a church. But all along, it's been something that Jesus never said we had to have. Some people even tithe, they give 10% of their incomes because they feel that that's what God requires of them. But Jesus never said anything about that. In fact, he told his followers, right, you received free, give free. So when we are looking for Christians who are following the example of Jesus, they shouldn't be asking for donations from us, right? They should be able to just give us the information, share the information that Jesus has already shared with us, because that's really what we're supposed to be doing, right? Is sharing the teachings of Jesus without charge. And that's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg, if you will, because there are rules in place about how we're supposed to dress, how we're supposed to groom ourselves, whether we're allowed to drink alcohol or coffee, whether it's okay to eat certain foods, whether it's okay to dance. There's some Christian religions where if you dance, they consider it potentially something that will lead to sin. And so they avoid dancing altogether. So many rules, but when you look at what Jesus actually taught, there's nothing about that in his teachings. So, once again, being a Christian is supposed to be easy. And rather than go into the specifics of what that Christianity should be, I like working backwards from the idea that it should be easy, right? When we have that as a litmus test, then we can go through everything we believe one by one and ask ourselves, did Jesus actually teach this? Is this something that is an easy and light load to carry? Because if it isn't, then we really need to ask ourselves where those things came from and free ourselves from those things. For this reason, Jesus said, right, the truth will set you free. When we accept Jesus, as he said, is I am the truth, when we accept him as the truth and everything else as extra and unnecessary, honestly, then we can feel that freedom that comes from setting down burdens that we were carrying all along that just weren't necessary. Until next time, may you know love, may you have peace, and may the truth set you free.